The first Christians met in private homes. Some of them, they were fortunate, they met in public meeting spaces for worship. If they were lucky, they had a very wealthy person who had just been converted to Christianity, and so they would meet in that person's courtyard. And then there were storehouses that they would go and have worship if the storehouse was vacant. I say that because the early movement, the early Jesus movement, did not have grand temples or impressive basilicas with spectacular altars. And yet, I think we can testify to the presence of God, because despite how much risk there was in following the way of Jesus at that time, the movement grew and spread. Even without those grand temples and those impressive basilicas, this movement attracted a lot of people. And it increased its reach and grew its numbers beyond anybody's imagination. And no matter what the empire did, and the empire did quite a bit to them, no matter what the empire did, God's grace and presence protected and prospered them even in the wilderness. And this Christian movement, by the way, was so successful and the message so profound that even the Emperor Constantine became a Christian. Now, you need to understand something. To go from being persecuted by the emperor to being embraced by the emperor meant a wholesale change. You see, this emperor not only put an end to the official persecution of Christians, he also made being Christian fashionable. Fashionable. You were in now. And then he did something else. Then he started building magnificent temples and grand basilicas. Do you really believe in those old house churches people were marching in with purple robes? Where do you think we get the robes from? We got the robes from Constantine. Now, that's not why I don't wear one all the time, but I'm just telling you. That's where we got that. But Constantine built these magnificent temples, and there's no doubt that he was indeed a faithful Christian, and that it was in his idea that we want to honor God with the best, with the biggest and the most ornate temples that we can build. But as I look at the pictures, and I invite you to go and look at some of those old temples because many of them still stand today, I wonder, however, if our monuments to God say more about us than they say about God. And it looks like that's what David was tempted to do in our text today, to build a monument to God, in part because it would say something about God. Yes, indeed, it would honor God, but also because it would say something about Israel, and it will say something about David. You see, God had been faithful to Israel, had been faithful to David, bringing them to a place of peace, security, and prosperity. And David knew that it was because God, that it was because of God that David defeated all of his enemies. It was because of God that David was allowed to assume leadership of a united nation. It was because of God that David would reign in peace and prosperity. So he decided to do what all empires do. He wanted to honor the God who made his rule possible. You see, David thought it was disrespectful that he should reside in a house of cedar, a palace, a grand palace, and that the law of God, the very presence of God, should sit in a ratty old tent. So his instincts were laudable. David's gratefulness and stewardship were exemplary. I'm going to build God a house. And the prophet Nathan said, yeah, that's exactly what you ought to do. But it pivots on us. As the prophet is at home, we're told that the word of God came to the prophet that I need you to go and talk to David. I need to send a message to David. I'm going to give you what God said in the PDD translation. That's the Pastor DeWayne Davis translation. And here's God. Who told you to build me a house? Now, I would have stopped right there. I would have obviously, but who told you to build me a house to live in? I have never had, nor have I ever needed a house. Even when the people were in the wilderness and moving about, I was free to move with them as I pleased. And when we were moving, did I ask for a temple? Did I ask you to build me anything? And furthermore, David, I didn't need a house when I took you from the pasture and put you in a palace. I didn't need your help then, and I don't need your help right now. See, y'all ain't getting it. Let me go further. I protected you. I prospered you. I committed myself to you. Did I need a temple to do all of that? No, I'm going to make a great name for you. Even before you put a foundation in the ground, I have decided to commit myself to you. I'm going to make a great name to you. I'm going to give Israel a homeland. I'm going to bless your children. I'm going to bless your children's children. I am going to give you grace and my presence forever. I don't even care if you are hard-headed and stubborn. I don't care if you disobey me. Now, I may whip you and chastise you, but I ain't going nowhere. I'm not going anywhere. My grace and my presence will last forever. So here's the point. Before you leave here and you get anything else, we don't do the building. God does the building. God has been building Israel into a people, a nation, a movement, nay, a dynasty, even without a temple. And if David doubted it, if Nathan doubted it, God said, you know what? You're not going to build me a house, David. You may not even live to see it, but your son will build it. That's how long I'm going to be around, even when you're not around. You see, a house is too confining. It's too limiting. It's too unimaginative. God is building a dynasty. God is building a movement that will span the generation. God is building a house in you. Brick and mortar hold no interest to God. Holds no interest to God. And God is not going anywhere, so David, you don't have to build a temple to house me. See, I know what David had in mind. We have the same mind. Once we experience God's peace and prosperity, we want to protect what God gave us. We actually even want to protect God. We want to make sure that God stays where we are. We want to put God's stamp of approval on everything we do and everything we own and everything we say. But see, while David's mind was on building a temple, God's focus was on building a dynasty that will last forever. David's imagination conceived of an edifice with gold and brilliance, brick and mortar, But God's sovereignty was creating a movement of the faithful that will go all throughout the world and bring people to God. So here's the thing. What God is saying is, to all of us, to David, to us, you can't contain me. You can't confine me. You can't restrain me. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. See, we often forget that ours is the religion of the empire. Oh, you didn't hear what I said. We live in the United States in the 21st century. Most of us in the United States are Christians. Therefore, Christianity is the religion of the empire. Oh, see, you still didn't hear it. Let me put it back to you. God belongs to us. See, you didn't hear it. We can get on Amazon and buy what we want to buy. We can go out of here today and go find another church. You can say, I don't care what Pastor DeWayne said. I'm going to that church over there where they don't talk about this mess. So you get to go and show. You can build a mega church. That's the religion of the empire. You get to build what you want to build for God. And so we often forget that Christianity is religion of we, as a people of empire, we are tempted to build places for God as a part of how we show up in the world. Look at my church. Oh, look at that auditorium. Look at the band I got. Oh, we get to name it. We get to show off. We forget that we have a tendency to put God on our religion. I got God. God doesn't have me. Oh, you know what I'm talking about. You all looking at me like I'm crazy. You know exactly what I'm talking about. We know how God is on our time and is on our dime. And as a people of faith, then we want to contain God. Oh, how do I know we want to contain him? Because we come up with these creeds. We come up with theology. We come up with worship. We come up with sanctuaries. And it all contains God. God is here where we are. God looks like I want God to look. God acts like what I want God to act like. Oh, see, no, I'm building for God. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. God is uncontainable. God is unrestrainable. God is free and sovereign. And here's the thing. This is what you want God to be. Here's how I know you want God. You do not. We do not want God to be confined and enshrined in this place. How do I know? How do I know this? Pastor, how do you know we don't want God to be? You do not want it. Because when we are in the hospital, we don't need God confined and enshrined here at all God's children. We need and want God in that hospital where we are. All right, you don't get it. When we're in the residential treatment center because we have been beaten by addiction, we're broken down. We don't want God confined and enshrined here in this place. We want God sitting right there next to us. We don't want God. We don't want God confined and enshrined here. No, when we are on the highways and the byways and the airways, we don't want God sitting in some mega church somewhere. No, we want God right where we are, grace and presence protecting us as we go along. That's how I know we don't want God in some building somewhere. Oh, I tell you, when we are in physical and emotional prisons, we don't need God confined and enshrined in some megachurch somewhere. We need God right where we are. And here's the thing God told David, and God is telling us, you can't bribe me. You can't control me. I'm free to move where I will. I'm free to go where I need to be. I'm free to do what I need to do so that my people will be saved. I have promised my people grace and presence forever. I'm not going anywhere, and you certainly can't confine me somewhere. There is nothing wrong with great temples and wonderful basilicas. Some of you probably look at my Facebook page. Everywhere I go, I visit some beautiful temple and some church. And I've even said on occasion that my big dream is to preach in the great Riverside Church in New York City. Beautiful, beautiful place. But I want us to know something. That God will not be confined and enshrined in those places. We don't need a building to receive God's grace and presence. We don't need grand basilicas to house God. We need God to be wherever we go, wherever we are. We want God's presence right there with us. And so even when we show up, we show up in this place. We want God's presence here. And there's nothing wrong. We break the bread and we drink the cup because we want to usher in God's presence right there where we are. But at the same time, I want to know wherever I break the bread and wherever I drink the cup, God is right there with me, blessing me as I go. Oh, you don't have to worry about it. Wherever you are, even in the worst places you can imagine. People get mad at me and fuss at me when I say, wherever, in the place you even should have been, in somebody's bed, you know you shouldn't have been up in there. But God is right there with you. In the bar you shouldn't have gone to because you know you're going to be tempted. But God was right there with you, not going anywhere. The worst mistake you can think you ever made, and you think that nobody ever loved you, God's grace and presence is right there with you. Even when you can't forgive yourself, when you're beating yourself up, when you just can't stand yourself, I got news for you. God's loving you all along the way. So don't confine and enshrine God. I talk to people all the time. And they feel all right about me up until sometimes I say I have a husband. And then all of a sudden, they got to bring God down to something that they can control. They got to bring God. As soon as they find out the wonderful, imaginative, big God is somehow brought down to the littlest, stingiest, hateful thing that they can make God be. But again, as God told David and as God told Nathan, you cannot contain me. I'll love who I love. I'll be with who I'll be with. And my people, whether they have a husband or of the same sex or anything, I don't care who they are, where they are, what they did, how they did it, how wrong you thought it was. My presence and my grace is with them forever. I ain't going nowhere. So, wherever you are, wherever you find yourself, wherever you think you want to be or going to be, if you think God is not there, don't worry about building a house. Don't even worry about showing up to the house. Just call on God. Build the house that you need with your praise, with your prayer. Just call. Just call. Because God's grace and presence has been promised to us forever. Amen.